So we're out here this morning working on the Stihl MS391. I'm running a 25-inch bar on here. There's nothing wrong with the saw. It's just that it's time to sharpen the chain, and I figured I'd show how I do it. I've already sharpened one side of the teeth, and then we're going to be doing just a couple of them because it's pretty monotonous just to sit here and watch all the teeth be sharpened. Fairly simple process. We'll jump right into it. So what I have here, this is actually a Husqvarna sharpening tool, and it's pretty handy. It come with the guide here, the file, or did not come with the file handle and a flat file. So what I've done is, since this is Stihl and it really don't matter, I've got a Stihl brand file in this handle, and it's a 13/64 and it's sized for these chains. If you look at the side of your bar when you have your cover off, it'll tell you what size chain you need for this bar, and then as well as that, when you look at your chain packaging, it'll tell you what diameter file you will need for this particular chain. We're running a large chisel chain. It's not a skip tooth or anything, it's just a standard yellow profile. You can see here maybe the yellow paint on this one link. We're using that for a start and stop point. That way we don't keep going round and round and sharpen a couple of teeth more than once, you know. So said, this chain has had some damage. You can see the corner of the teeth have been knocked off. I've more than likely hit a rock or a nail in a piece of wood or log at the sawmill. So we've got to fell some trees today, so we're going to get this chain back up to spec. And you can sharpen these guys several times. Now keep in mind, after you sharpen several times, if it does not cut, it's because of your rakers right here. These rakers, I usually knock mine down a pass or two with the file every other sharpening. You don't want to go too much, because then this tooth will be taking too big of a bite, and if you don't have enough horsepower to back up what that tooth's trying to do, you're just going to be continuously stalling out. So with this particular sharpener, it shows which direction the sharpener needs to be placed on the bar, and it basically just sits down and rides on top of the chain. So yes, the chain's moving, but this sharpener is now locked in with this tooth, and it sets your degree and pitch. Now your degree, you can move it around and change what your degree is, but if you look at a Stihl chainsaw tooth, or any tooth for that matter, on the top they have laser cut in a mark showing that this is what the original degree of this chain was. Now you won't get spot on perfect doing it this way, but you can sharpen this chain several times with a file like this. I know there's more sophisticated setups and make my chains last longer, but for the purposes I'm using them for, normally I'll end up destroying the tooth before the longevity of the chain was even near. So once that tooth is destroyed too much, I'll just replace it. So I'm not getting nitpicky about how I sharpen it. I do like a good sharp chain. It needs to throw a good chip, and this file setup has been more than good enough for what we do. So basically, once you get this bracket set on the chain, you'll lay your file in here and it'll sit right in that groove. And I try to run my file parallel with that mark on top of the tooth as close as I can. And this chain is pretty dull. I will usually hit 3 or 4 strikes, depending how long it's been since I sharpened, and I'll feel it. That tooth is now razor sharp and it's ready to cut wood. So we'll just move on to the next tooth. And once you're doing this, it moves along pretty quick. It don't take too awful long to sharpen a chain. And this little guide here keeps you pretty close to the parameters you need to be set at. Now these few teeth here, the corner's been knocked off, and it'll take a couple more sharpenings before that corner's all the way there. I just don't want those teeth to be shorter than the rest of the teeth on the chain, because if that happens, those teeth won't be cutting, you know, until these other teeth get sharpened down to where they need to be at. Now moving along a pretty good click here, but if you watch as I'm sharpening this, when I go to lift this file, I'm taking the corner of my thumb here and raking across that corner in the front of the tooth, feeling how sharp it is to make sure that I've hit more than enough sufficient passes on that one tooth. And usually what I do is I'll slide the chain back with the guide so I don't cut my fingers on the chain. Or as you can see, I mean, you can move along a pretty good click. And this will be just like a brand new one. All right, we'll stop there for a minute. I'm about halfway through the chain, and I'll come back when I start knocking these rakers down. Now we've got the rest of those teeth sharpened. We're gonna knock down these rakers because I know it's due time to, you know, have the rakers brought down some. This particular gauge, it does have a raker spot so you can file the rakers down to the appropriate height. It's got softwood and hardwood depending on how much biter you're wanting to take. Softwood's of course more aggressive. It just goes up and sits on the tooth in front, or close to the tooth in front, and it sits on top of the tooth behind, and that raker's sticking right above that plane a little bit. So you take your file and strike that down a little bit. What I've done instead is I'm just going to take and change out my file to my flat file. And what I like doing is I just take and sit my file on top, and I'm going to take a couple passes. Now, when you're doing that, you heard the difference. This tooth was cutting, this tooth's not. That tooth's not really cutting. I mean, it's cutting a small amount, but it's just like sharpening the teeth. The rakers go the opposite direction. So what we'll do is we'll do every other raker on this side as the same direction as the tooth we were sharpening. And you can hear that cutting and see that it gets shiny on top. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I'm taking off just a nominal amount of material, but it's make a world of difference while you're cutting. So I'm just taking 2 passes off. I don't know how much that's taken off exactly, but it'll be more than enough to suffice what we're going to be cutting. And what I'm doing is I'm cutting these off, or filing them down. If you see me take more than 1 pass, it's because I either didn't get a full stroke. What I'm looking at is the top of this tooth. Once you file it, it looks to be like a little square. And once you have that little square, I'm trying to make sure they're all relatively close, same size. So if it don't look like I took off quite a bit enough, I just go back and hit a little bit more until the shiny square that's on top is the same as the previous tooth. Not a lot of rocket science in doing this, but also be careful when you're doing this, because when you see me grab the chain and pull back, my chain's not loose, but it's easy to move. But if you slip these teeth you just now sharpened, I mean, it will slice you wide open. So if you can, wear gloves. I don't ever do it, but I don't necessarily always do things the right way. This just happens to be the particular way that I do these. And just like the teeth, you can move along at a pretty good click once you get a pattern set up. And filing these off actually goes a lot quicker than the teeth because there's nowhere near as much. You don't have to use the tool. And it's nowhere near as that tooth had a burr it didn't want to take off, and it's right here in this damage. I've got 3 or 4 teeth here. It's damaged, and I've struck something pretty good. I got to looking at them after I had started sharpening, and several of these teeth, the points are damaged. They'll be fine. I've got them sharpened. Now that we've taken the raker down, that side's complete. I actually went over a couple of times, not paying attention, getting in, moving too fast. So now when you see the last time, these opposing teeth was not filing down correctly, and it's because, you know, they're running a different direction. Make sure you got your file turned the right way. Just take a couple of passes off. That's all there is to it. This is the Stihl MS391. We've had it for a couple of years. It's been a really good saw. I used to run nothing but Husqvarnas, and a neighbor of mine talked me into getting Stihl, and I probably won't ever leave Stihl unless they just do something crazy I don't like. But thus far, this MS391, you can see it's had some wear and tear. It needs to be cleaned up. I used a lot at the mill to trim off limbs and felling trees. That's why I'm running the 25-inch bar. We do a lot of bucking at the sawmill if the log's too long, because the majority of the logs we cut, the loggers may bring in 9-foot logs when I only need 8, and there's no use in cutting that extra foot of lumber, especially if you're just cutting pine. That's a lot of wasted wood that ends up in the scrap pile, and it's a lot of cutting that, you know, you're doing and not getting paid for. So I'll usually buck the logs down to about 8 foot 2-3 inches. That way you still got plenty enough room to square up the boards on the end. So after sharpening the chainsaw, this is going to be the first tree we fell. It's a pretty good sized hickory tree, and we're going to try to drop it up this way. We'll see how it goes, see how our shavings are. timber. Well, hate to break those little trees down like that and put them in a bind, but what we're doing is these trees that I'm taking down here are right in the way where our fence is going to be. And I don't want these growing up around the fence, because once I put the fence up, I want to be able to, you know, drive around our fence with a side-by-side. So several of these little trees are coming out. We'll go ahead and trim some of these out of the way, and we'll cut them up later for firewood. But this log here, we're going to cut it into 12-foot sections, make some wood out of it. There's 12 foot there, and we'll usually go a few inches over. Really nice hickory. Loose. This one's loose. It can fall at any time. The rest of this one's so crooked, we'll turn the rest of it into firewood, so we can use it in our smoking, smoke some of our hogs next year. So 2 good 12 footers. I was hoping for 3, but now the tree's down, I can see all the crooks in it, and that won't suffice for what we're doing. We'll pause here and we'll come back to the next tree. Alright, I'm at the far end of our property, and this is another tree that needs to go. Got the tractor blocking the road. This is a county road leading into a park. We're going to drop this guy across the road and get it zipped up and cleaned up real quick. And this is my sign, by the way. I'll pull these nails out. This tree's just right where my fence is going to be coming through. All right, that came down good. We'll just have to watch that old dead pine tree snag there. And the briars. Let's get us at least a couple 12-footers out of this, and then we'll get the road cleaned up here. I didn't bring a marker with me, so I always spit on the log where I need to cut. What we'll do is we'll cut these logs out and then push that top back over onto our property. Get the road cleaned up. This chain is cutting very, very well after we sharpen it. It's pretty aggressive. Alright, we'll get this guy cleaned up out of the road real quick. We'll use the tractor to push those tops out of the road. It's not a very busy road, but I still like taking some safety precautions. That old dead pine tree right there. I'm surprised that joker ain't come down in the storm. It's rotten. And it's already got multiple cracks in it. And it's like that before we cut our tree. We barely glanced it. If we'd hit it any harder, I think it would have knocked it on out of here. Let's finish cleaning this road up and then we'll get these logs and take them back to the mill. I don't like having that old big dead tree behind me. I need to get with my neighbor there, and if he needs a hand, we'll cut her down. These old red oaks make a mess when they fall. I probably should have picked this crap up here before I dropped this tree across it. But we'll get these two out of the way. I'll come back and move them and get the biggest log of them. This one here is kind of crooked. May end up eventually cutting it into an 8-footer. But for now, we're gonna go ahead and tote it back to the mill. Well, this log here wraps up what we need and finishes this project. So until the next project, we'll see you then.